I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to do what musicians do. Nothing I do is really new. It's just a transfer to this instrument. I'm a working musician. I'm a forever sideman. I don't lead groups. I'm not much of a self-promoter. And but with a name like Cloud, if my last name was Gespansky or something like that, yeah, that's Bouvier Gespansky on the banjo.
Greetings, everyone. Howdy, friends and neighbors. Welcome to the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast, featuring your host, Keith Billik. Hey, that's me. And I'm sure glad you could all join me again. Last episode, I remember I encouraged everyone in the States to make sure you go vote, and that's now behind us. And it's been a heck of a week, right? So I'm here to provide some cleansing energy that can only be achieved through the beautiful sounds of the banjo and bring, inner peace back to everyone who's maybe felt a little anxious, including myself. So happy to be back here with you, and I have a great episode for you. Another way to bring myself inner peace besides actually playing or listening to the banjo is to talk about my lovely, lovely Patreon supporters. And today I'm thrilled to be able to thank a gentleman named Pete Miller for his Patreon support of the podcast. Pete has a pretty familiar story that I hear about fairly often, where he played banjo once upon a time, but one reason or another, he had to put it down. But now with this whole COVID quarantine thing going on, he thought that would be a great time to pick it back up. So he bought himself a Deering banjo, and he's hitting those left and right hand boot camps pretty hard, and he says they're really helpful. Well, Pete, congratulations on getting back into it, even if it had to be under some slightly less than ideal circumstances. But hey, maybe it was fate all along, just conspiring to reunite you with the banjo here, and we're really glad to have you back. And I'm really glad to have you as a Patreon supporter, so thank you so much. For those of you who don't know how to become a Patreon supporter but would love to, go to patreon.com/banjopodcast, and the vast majority of the income that keeps this show running comes directly from you Patreon supporters. So I am ever thankful for those of you who are able to do that. As always, you can also support the show in all the regular ways that you support other businesses or podcasts. You can subscribe and like and rate the podcast, 5 stars, of course. You can share the episodes with your friends on social media. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find me on there. And I love just connecting with all of you, and really happy to have you listening today. Today's special guest is Pat Cloud. Pat is one of the main groundbreaking pioneers of playing traditional jazz on the 5-string banjo. As you can hear in the music in the background right now, he was doing things in the early 80s that would still be considered pretty progressive and out there, even by today's standards. So he was way ahead of his time and still remains one of the best at what he does. I feel really fortunate to have been able to do this interview for quite a few reasons, not the least of which is this interview actually took place about a week before quarantine really hit. So it was one of the last opportunities I had to meet up with anybody in person for doing podcast interviews. Another reason is Pat is famously somewhat enigmatic. He isn't a big self-promoter. You don't really see him around at festivals and stuff, so he's a little hard to track down. And to that end, I owe a huge debt to a guy named Dub Pierce, who is a great banjo player in his own right, has a great YouTube channel where if you're interested in jazz banjo, Dub Pierce's channel is a great place to stop for that. But at any rate, Dub reached out to me and made the connection between Pat and I. And while I was on my vacation in California earlier this year, Dub arranged, he's a recording engineer, and arranged to have some studio space available for Pat and I to use for this interview. And you're going to hear more about Dub in the next part. This is actually at least a 2-part interview. Pat and I had quite a long conversation. He actually thought of a really intriguing idea that he wanted to compose a piece during the interview. And that is something that you're going to have to listen to part 2 for. But if you hear him refer to composing a piece of music on the spot, that's what he's talking about. So that was part of this interview. That's going to be in a future episode. But you'll be able to tell immediately that Pat is a very cerebral musician and has been one of the real true innovators on the instrument. So I think you'll really enjoy hearing what he has to say. So here he is, part 1 of the interview with Pat Cloud.
The story goes like this. I don't know if I've even mentioned it before, but...
you mentioned something about a house that you were moving into or moving out of and
my parents were moving into a new house.
Okay.
And they were working, both of them. And so I was stationed at the house to let people in the backyard to work in the backyard.
Okay.
This was the summer of '63. And there was nothing but a couch, a divan, and... sort of this retro-style record player, with the big horn with the speaker in the middle.
Sure.
Right? That sort of thing.
With a little dog listening to it? Was there
well, no.
Okay.
It was trying to copy that, in a retro way. But so my mother said, "Oh, well, you'll be here by yourself. You need some music." Mm-hmm. So she went down to one of these clubs, store clubs called Unimart at the time, and bought 3 records. The one record was Mantovani Presents.
And what is that?
Elevator music. It's,
Okay.
It's
schmaltzy.
Schmaltzy kind of orchestral.
All right.
And then 2 other records, Foggy Mountain Banjo and Flattened Scruggs at Carnegie Hall.
Much better. Much better.
I listened to about 20 seconds of Mantovani.
So you had good taste even back then.
Well, I didn't really want to be on an elevator, So with this record player, you put a record on, it keeps playing it over and over again until you decide to turn it over. Mm-hmm. So it was wallpaper for about 3 weeks.
Just looping them.
Looping it. And it always was amazing to me because there's this Foggy Mountain Banjo album, there's this picture of Earl in a painting.
Right.
And he looks like this really funny look, and he's holding up these picks that look like weapons. They're filed off to little points,
Yeah.
And he's really proud. He's holding up his 3 fingers like this. So that got me curious.
Okay.
So when we finally moved into the place, my sister, my aunt, my mother's sister, they went to a swap meet and brought back things to hang on the walls. And one of the things they brought back was a Sears silver tone style banjo, I guess, but with only 3 strings. It was a 5-string banjo. And they hung it up in the foyer, on the wall as a decoration. And I'd sneak this thing down, start the record up, and get a matchbook cover. And I didn't know, I could see there weren't all the strings there, but I'd sort of try to play along. I never touched the tuners, but I'd try to get a groove, acting as if. That's what a child does.
Okay, yeah.
A little kid. Acting as if is actually a great way to learn anything, actually.
Sure, yeah.
There's a
kind
psychology
of fake it till you
to
make it sort of thing, yeah.
So, my mother, she knows her son. She would say to me, "Now, Pat, put that back. You're not allowed to touch that."
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's the ultimate temptation right there, is the forbidden fruit.
Yes.
Cool.
So a friend of my father's took me down to a music store, and bought a new set of 5 strings. He played a sort of a Merle Travis guitar style, and he tuned it up with a pitch pipe to, C banjo tuning, and just started to play with these 2 fingers. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't let him out of there till he showed me how he did that.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of it.
So did you progress pretty quickly then? And was it the Scruggs style that really caught your ear that you wanted to pursue?
Luckily, the record player had a 16 and 7/8 RPM on it. So I was told by this guitar player friend of my stepfather's that if I wanted to learn, I should learn off the records. And he said, slow them down, slow these records down. So I started out with plastic picks, the sort of, then I don't know how I got hip to Nationals, but I got some old Nationals. And I even filed them.
To look like the Foggy Mountain Banjo
exactly.
painting?
Yeah. Earl was my beginning influence. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Right.
Little did I know I'd spent half a century doing it, but it's amazing to me.
So then, obviously what most people know you for at this point is being the dude who figured out how to play jazz on the banjo. What was like the next step from going from slowing down Earl to maybe developing your melodic sense and the way you approach the banjo in that regard?
There was a banjo album called New Dimensions in Banjo and Bluegrass by Eric Weisberg and Marshall Brickman. And they were doing some of this kind of melodic things. I think Gordon Terry was playing the fiddle. I think even Clarence White was playing a little bit on it. And, well, that's interesting. I think at heart I've always been a melodist type of person. As
opposed to maybe a more, rhythm-oriented person? I mean, you obviously need both, but...
I've always liked melodies. I think I dabbled in classical guitar at that early period. Anyway, I learned by taking
the same way you did with Earl.
Yeah.
Okay, but you also have kind of your own way of getting around melodically now. When did you start exploring those kind of things?
That's a hard question. I'm not sure that... All I wanted to do was just see what it looked like. All I wanted to do, if I heard... Later, it would be any instrument, piano, I just wanted to see how it looked. I guess I've had this thing where if it obstructs me, I'm not a technician, I'm a opportunist in terms of technique. If the banjo doesn't like it, I'll pretty much abandon it and try some other approach.
Okay.
If there's a phrase or something that I want to learn, then I'll see what the banjo does like and see if I can keep the gist of something without getting too far away from it. Unless I'm trying to make something up, then I'll truncate or concatate or phrases and things like that. So.
And by something the banjo doesn't like, what do you mean? Just trying to play a melody that for some reason doesn't lay out in a friendly way on the fingerboard?
It's all in my head. It's a personal mythology to me because it has nothing to do with anything it's verifiable,
But you had a sense of this is something worth practicing and working on and developing versus this might be a dead end or this is for someone else to figure out.
You've nailed it, Keith. I tell you, for the first 20 or 25 years, I said, this is a lost end. I thought maybe if I tried to just learn as much as I could about the system here, the G tuning and all that, that it might be something that would be worth, that people would find valuable. But I don't think so, really. I think all it is with me is that I have to know how it's done. That's what got me to sit down for hours in front of a record player.
Right.
And if I can't find out how it's done, I was copying Douglas Dillard, people like that, and the Dillards were playing in town at the time. So we'd go to their concerts. I wasn't old enough, so a mandolin player, a friend of mine, would drive me. And the first show was standing room only. The second show was and the third show, I I know where Doug was going to stand with the microphone set up, so I'd get into a position so I could look up his neck, you see, like looking up a banjo player's skirt or something like that.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Anyway, because I wanted to see how his left hand differed from the way my left hand had tried to sonically put it together without actually seeing it, you know.
Yeah.
But like anybody else, Douglas Dillard or Scruggs or any player, you know, they're in a constant state of either changing or so. Some of the stuff he was doing was new to me because he wasn't playing it the same way. He did it on the record, you see.
Yeah.
Am I getting close to the gist of your? I don't think that what I'm doing is. I can't identify it as anything unusual.
Yeah, I was just a little shocked to hear you say something that to me sounded like you were taking the easy way out when you said you would abandon it if the banjo didn't like it, because everything about your playing does not leave anyone with the impression of that you're someone who took an easy way out, because to us mere mortals, what you do is really difficult.
If I find something, let's see, how could we say this? I mean, it's well known.
Mm-hmm. And for everyone other than the people in this room who can't see you, what you're doing is playing the G major scale.
I'm playing it over the positions, you know, of a G chord at the 5th fret. Mm-hmm. When I can go.
In a melodic way.
And so it's open strings. It's a cross string kind of playing. But what started to happen when I was getting into the horn players and everything is that the 5th string became a vehicle of getting close to a lot of the argot of jazz phrases and things like that, you know, the cliches and all that sort of thing.
Can you remember an example of one of the early things that got you excited about trying to play jazz on the banjo? And then in what ways do you think that the 5th string helped you do that?
I remember sitting in an apartment with a reel-to-reel listening to Oscar Peterson and C-Jam Blues, you know, and taking that solo apart. And I think he's... something like that, you know, and I would try to find as close as I could get, you know.
And even that, you slowing down records?
Yeah, well, it was a 2-speed tape recorder, a Marantz cassette. Well, first was a reel-to-reel, then I got a Marantz cassette.
Right, yeah, you said the
they
tape.
had a 2-speed thing on it, you know, it's old technology. Then somebody gave me a Dizzy Gillespie Charlie Parker recording, and visually I'd have this picture of these little silver bullets going through and hitting all of these melodic note balloons. And then I realized that what they were playing was, but only in B flat. Okay. It was the blues. And they were using all of these transition types of chords. So I bought a Joe Pass book.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, with it. Yeah. Anyway, so I started the best I could copying those kind of, which is a little more difficult because of the range of an alto sax. Mm-hmm. So I would take what I could find and see how it looks, you know.
Okay. You're talking about the Charlie Parker lines now?
The Charlie Parker lines. And I started writing music notation because somebody told me to do it.
Okay.
Just like a jazz guitar player told me, well, you know, if you want to learn to play jazz, you got to transcribe solos and you got to learn all your scales, you know.
Yeah.
So these people weren't teachers, so to speak. but they were people that said, this is what you got to do. Okay, well, okay, fine.
You viewed them as an authority of some sort, so...
Yeah, well, I don't know. Musical instruments. What are you going to say about it? Each one is a discrete invention, and they're all noisemakers. They're just.
Yeah.
So this had a beautiful system because it's tuned in thirds, beautiful thirds. So all of the positions are very pleasingly geometric, and I've been on this kick of threes.
Okay. How do you
threes,
mean?
huh?
How do you mean you've been on a kick of threes? Oh, you're talking about your banjo now?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I'm talking about the chord structure, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah, we got the three. Right?
Okay.
But if you're playing this, this. There's three more discrete things, and then the last inversion. Well, anyway, because there's three inversions for every chord, then the diatonic harmony, has three different shapes for each inversion.
Right.
Okay. Then the minor has three more shapes. So that's twice 9. So you have a series of 18 beautifully memorable shapes that you can learn and put together, which form the definition of the keys.
Yeah.
On the strings. And I say this because if you've got something here like say an E minor here, third string, fourth, first and second, fifth, it translates over to fourth string, fifth, third string, fourth, and second string, fifth. And you get a nice little E minor sound.
Yeah. This might be a bit of a tangent, but do you know what synesthesia is? Are you familiar with that?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Really? How did you know?
I see colors. In fact, that's why I'm going to write a song.
Oh, okay.
Because
I don't mean to steal your thunder.
Oh, no, it's all right. It's not that. It's just that I rarely mentioned it. The tuba player at Disney knew what I was talking about.
Huh.
C is sort of an amber. F is moving into, I don't know, it's not quite green, but sort of yellowish green.
So this is right on for you when I ask that.
It's not like they pop up in front of my eyes or anything. It would be just the same as if I said Abraham Lincoln. Now you're looking right at me, but you know what Abraham Lincoln looks like.
Sure.
Yeah. You don't have to close your eyes and get a blank screen and all that. You know, or a purple cow, or whatever.
But the difference between a synesthesia, a synesthetic, is that what you would call a person with?
Yeah.
Is Abraham Lincoln has an objective visual component, whereas a musical note
and I understand
doesn't.
Different kinesthesists. They have different mirages of colors. They'll see differently. One lady who was a great pianist said that she sees the key of C or C as black.
Right.
Very
so it's
dark,
still
sunny.
subjective.
It's a subjective thing.
Between the people.
Yeah. And I thought everybody was that. I thought everybody saw colors when it isn't like they just stark out and paint across the. It's just sort of an inner kind of thing. I'm not even aware of it at first, but if I'm jamming with someone, if I just relax and cool it, and look at the guitar player's hand and just sort of. It'll start to happen, but it's one of these things. It's like this. If you try to grasp it, it's elusive. But if you just relax, it sort of makes itself. Especially after I feel that I've gotten the progression down, then I can see the panoply go across, in a sort of. benign way.
That's incredible. I'm not
it's
somebody
not as,
who experiences that.
It's not as stark as it is to describe it. It's a very sort of inward kind of. If I'm at home on the couch with my eyes closed, I see it really well because I'm relaxed.
Well, I just noticed that everything you say seems to come back to either a shape or a visual component of some sort. So yeah, I was really curious about that. So that makes a lot of sense. Hey, sorry to interrupt everybody, but I just couldn't resist an opportunity to tell you about the world's most trusted source for new, used, and vintage fretted instruments, and that, of course, is Elderly Instruments, which is a family-owned business located in Lansing, Michigan. But if you're not in Lansing, that's okay. They ship worldwide, too, and they just have a vast selection of acoustic guitars, electric guitars, ukuleles, mandolins, all the accessories and books that you'd want for either of those, and of course plenty and plenty of banjos. And something that people don't often think about when you're buying stuff like that, particularly entry-level instruments, is the fact that they have a world-renowned repair shop as well. When all those instruments come into the store, if they do not pass a thorough setup and inspection by the repair shop, they get sent back, and that sometimes angers the suppliers of Elderly Instruments, but it lets you know that Elderly stands by their products, and they also have a helpful and knowledgeable sales staff to help you find what you need, and you can be confident that you're going to get something that is set up to Elderly's high quality standards. So if that sounds great, and I know it does, check them out at elderly.com or call 517-372-7880 to speak to one of their helpful salespeople. It's where I go, and it's where you should go too. The Picky Fingers Banjo podcast is also proud to be sponsored by Peghead Nation. With Peghead Nation's streaming video courses, perfect for quarantine by the way, but they have courses in banjo, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, dobro, upright bass, and ukulele. You can learn bluegrass, old time, and plenty of other styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in roots music. For example, listen to some of the courses. These are just the banjo courses that they offer. A couple different classes with Bill Evans, such as beginning banjo and bluegrass banjo. You can learn clawhammer banjo with Evie Layden, Wade Ward style banjo with Bruce Molsky, the banjo according to Danny Barnes, and also contemporary bluegrass banjo with Wesley Corbett. And each of those courses includes high-quality multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation and tab, play-along tracks, and plenty of tunes and songs to play. So it's everything you need to up your skills, especially in these isolated times. And listen up, because this is the best part. If you join any of Peghead Nation's video courses now, you're going to get your first month free by going to pegheadnation.com and use the promo code PickyFingers at checkout. That's Picky Fingers, all one word, all lowercase, at pegheadnation.com. Check it out.
The threes that I'm talking about are the chord forms, for one thing. Mm-hmm. The structure of the neck, you were asking about, what was the question you asked? You asked, you thought that I had some different way. I can't identify that because I just look at people's left hand. Uh-huh. But there are a couple of things that are interesting. Let's say if we're in the key of G here. And I'll third string open, fourth string at the seventh, second string open, third string fifth, first string open, first string open, second string at the fifth, and first string at the fourth, and then fifth string. Well, I look at this as a breaking point on top. For one thing, when you get up the neck, it facilitates the use of the fifth string. Mm-hmm. So like this, they shift down in pairs. This is the first and second string, second and third, which is second string seventh, third string nine, and then it goes all the way down to the third string 11th, fourth string at the 14th.
Right.
All right. I call these breaking points because in different keys, say we move to B flat, you have it there and you have it here. So the breaking point is the same, except it's moved down.
Okay.
All right. After you get to about 3 sharps or 5 flats, it disappears. because you're
we no
not
longer have that pivot.
Exactly. The nature of the instrument. I don't think this instrument was thought out all that well. I think it arose out of the dirt somewhere. I see these Egyptian hieroglyphs of these the musician servants to the king, playing gourd instruments. So it's as old as dirt.
Yeah, quite literally.
So you have to I tried to make of it. How did I know whether it was thought out or not? I had no idea what the history of it was,
So you mentioned that somebody told you that the most important things were to learn all your scales and what else did you say? Something of that nature, and that actually is...
Transcribe jazz solos.
And a transcribe.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have your book about how to play.
Oh, thank you.
How to play jazz, and that is a big part of what you. So you must have, to some extent, bought into that advice, because that is a decent part of that, is to hear those scales and to hear them go through the circles of fourths and those types of things.
In the Musicians Union book, they have people listed under certain instruments. I had Local 7 over here in Anaheim when I was working with Disney. And they have, horn players, piano players. Then they have a category called miscellaneous.
And guess which
banjo,
category the banjo is in? Yeah.
Jaws harp, And so I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to do what musicians do. I wanted to hang around people who played music on non-miscellaneous instruments, right? So I wanted to be able to converse with them. I wanted to be able to learn what they were learning. I wanted to be able to accept and just... Nothing I do is really new. It's just a transfer to this instrument.
Yeah.
I'm a working musician. I'm a forever sideman. Mm-hmm. I don't lead groups.
Right.
I'm not much of a self-promoter, and... But with a name like Cloud, it's a good studio, or a good, if my last name was Gespansky or something like that.
That's a little more memorable and easy to spell.
Yeah, that's Bouvier Gespansky on the banjo.
But do you still think that if you had a student, for example, who said, I learned some Scruggs stuff, but I really love Dizzy Gillespie and Joe Pass. What should I do? That is what you would still recommend.
Well, that's why I wrote the Straight Ahead Jazz Banjo book, because I wanted to at least give a brief preview of some of the things that were transferred from things like guitar music, piano music, and horn music. But I wanted to make it banjoistic. I wanted to at least cover the key of G from people that wanted to make the transition between... And don't get me wrong, my assessment of where this instrument is that a lot of people don't know people like A.A. Farland or Wes Osman, the early pioneers, because banjos started out melodic, okay? Yeah. Then the genius of Earl Scruggs just changed all that, you see. He had not only a simple style, but a very forceful, metronomic, athletic right-hand development. And he just turned this whole spin of the banjo world around, And but that's okay, Well, probably the song I'm going to try to come up with here tonight. I was telling Dub, nobody wants to hear Stella by Starlight or all the things you are.
I think you're outnumbered.
You are.
Yeah.
I'm just maybe I'm making an assumption that's but that seems more like novelty to a lot of people, So.
It might be, but I mean, the jazz players still play those too, and that's no different. You're enjoying the musicality that you hear. So back to your story. Who were you? I don't know if I skipped too far ahead, getting you talking about jazz too much, but how was your career going? Who were you playing with at that point, or what were your experiences in developing as a professional?
See. I actually started working at a music store called McCabe's Guitar Store in 1970, and I didn't read tablature. I had the Pete Seeger Red Book, but I couldn't make head nor tails of it. Mm-hmm. So Bob Baxter, who was running the stringed music teaching at McCabe's Guitar Shop, said I'd have to send the students home with something. So he suggested writing a line, and underneath was the string number, and on top would be the fret number. If you were sliding on a string, you'd put 2-3 on the third string or something.
Okay.
Like that. And so I wrote out all my tablature that I knew with that simple system. Mm-hmm. And I was teaching at McCabe's Guitar Store maybe 2 or 3 years. Then I believe in the mid-'70s, joined a band called The New Tradition with Jimmy Goodrow and Keith Whitley.
Oh, wow, yeah.
A good friend of mine, Jim Lanners, on bass. Mm-hmm. He's still a good friend. In fact, we're going to breakfast tomorrow. And that was, just hold on. I mean, those guys, they just take right off, and it was just...
Was that pretty straight ahead bluegrass?
Oh,
with those
yeah,
guys?
but they were, because it was the new tradition, they'd do things, like things that were happening in pop rock type.
Okay.
So that was a great period. In probably 74, beginning of 75, I really wanted to get interested in this improvisation stuff. In the 70s, I'd go with the bluegrass band at the time was, what was it?
Are we thinking
Got any gum? Oh, let's see. Town and Country Boys. And we'd go to the Weiser, Idaho fiddle contest up in Weiser, Idaho. And about that time in the early 70s, there was a kid running around named Mark O'Connor, who was 9 years old and almost winning all the adult contests.
Yeah. Lighten it up.
But my experience with that was I was playing some melodic things then, but during the evening, they'd run up 2 pickup trucks together and start them up and let them idle. Then they'd take cables off the batteries, set them up so there'd be some light, and there were 4 fiddlers, Roy Lee Cowan, Texas Shorty, Benny Thomason, and Byron Berline. Mm-hmm. And they would get one of these old time tunes like Done Gone or something like that, and they'd just take chorus after chorus of these improvised solos. It just thrilled me to death. It just changed my life.
Okay.
And I just wanted to know how that was done.
Up to that point, you didn't really improvise at all?
No. Byron Berline had been living in the Los Angeles area in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
And he made me a cassette tape of old-time fiddle tunes. So I was hoovering that all up, mm-hmm. absorbing it as much as possible, and because it's all the same thing. They used to in the Texas and Oklahoma style fiddling, they used to grade you off for getting too jazzy.
Oh, okay. Don't like that.
Is that great or what?
Yeah.
So most of the things that they were doing when they'd have the jam sessions, they got all the shackles off, and they were just playing whatever came to their mind and what they liked to do.
So that's their chance.
That was their chance, and it was just some of the most. I said, that's it. I've got to sometime get into jazz playing, because first of all, I know the pattern of harmony was a little more advanced, especially from the bebop 40s, mid 40s on. I remember reading an article, I think Benny Goodman called bebop Chinese music. playing. Every generation has their, playing wrong notes on purpose.
Right. It's a bridge too far.
Oh yeah. So all of this stuff just fascinated me, and here I got a banjo. I'm going to play a little banjo with it. And for me, it just.
And you went right for the bebop?
Why not? I mean, somebody, I won't name it, the person, somebody said, you can't do that on banjo. And it went back to Mom saying, now you can't.
You're not allowed to touch the banjo.
You're not allowed to touch that banjo.
Right, that's exactly what I thought.
My nose crinkles up and I go, right. So, and I also started in the mid-'70s, actually a little bit in the mid-'70s, but more in the '80s after I reemerged. I started, I've got about, 50, 53 jazz transcriptions of Sonny Stitt, piano players Arthur Peterson, because I got a tape recorder and one of these little keyboard things, that I could. So I transcribed solos because that's what they told me to do,
Yeah.
At that time, the only real jazz playing was 4-string. Right. A lot of it was tenor. I couldn't relate. Plectrum, I related to more. And I met a gentleman at Disney named Doug Maddox, virtuoso, plays a great 5-string, but is just a virtuoso plectrum player.
Okay.
And he showed me some chords, and I said to him, I'm not letting you leave till you show me how you do that.
Yeah. These are all starting to sound familiar.
Yes. So he got me into chord soloing.
Okay.
Because I just...
on the 5-string or on the 4?
On the 5.
Okay. Do you have any, what was he showing you? Do you have anything you could demonstrate that's kind of that?
I think it was Yes, Sir, That's My Baby or something. It was one of these old tunes. I can't remember which it was, but... and he was in the key of C tuning, So, and so I found out I made another great discovery, at least a personal one, listening to the bebop players, especially Bud Powell, who pioneered a kind of right hand that was really sparse as he was soloing with his, pioneered a kind of left hand. I'm left-handed. Really sparse left hand while he would be soloing with his. So I was listening to these notes, these guide notes that he was doing with his left hand. Wait a minute. I'd hear things like. That sort of thing with the left hand. While he'd
tritones, basically?
Yeah, tritone little things. Sometimes they were open fifths, but he's concentrating on his right hand solo, you see.
Sure.
And and then I discovered that if you wanted to play a 13 chord, all you need is the tritone and the 6. Just like that. With that kind of voicing, move this 13th or the 6th down to becomes G7 sharp 5. Move the whole position down to you got C9. Sharp the 9 and you're back. These are the kind of left hand things that not exactly what Bud Powell was doing. I'm just saying that I found that these things were sitting there right in plain sight, hiding in plain sight.
I guess an obstacle that definitely frustrates me, so I imagine it probably frustrates a lot of other people, is even going from something like what you just demonstrated, maybe we can understand how to make these chords, but then if you try to listen to bebop and try to figure out, now what, I know they're in there somewhere, but it's so hard to hear on an internal level, the same way maybe a lot of us hear a 1-4-5 change in a bluegrass song. So were you pretty successful at?
I empathize with that, really. As a matter of fact, the transition is not as onerous or hard as you might think. It might take a little bit of listening to some of the key albums, to get used to what they're doing, the extended harmonies and that sort of thing. But I'd be listening to a Charlie Parker solo right in the middle of it. He quotes Popeye the Sailor Man.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's all just melody, Sonny Rollins, what did he do? I'm an old cowhand.
Oh, in what context?
Jazz context.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So to these guys, it's all just melodies. Uh-huh. But, and I could say that all is not just sugar and spice all the time with playing the banjo, because I would give workshops, and at the very end, I would make a survey, say it's 30, 35 people, and I'd say, now how many of you can name the notes on your banjo? Maybe 2 hands. Three if you're lucky, yeah.
Huh. And this would be at like a festival situation?
Yeah.
Festival setting or something?
Banjo camp, that sort of thing. So, to me, that's discouraging.
Yeah.
How many have actually taken the notes on a banjo and matched it up to standard notation? Which is why I always present all of the material I have in both standard and tablature.
So that they can see that correspondence.
So they can see the correspondence. And in fact, part of what the banjo likes, has nothing to do with me. If you look at the tablature and a lot of the things that I write, it's a very open right hand where it's not that I won't play consecutive notes or something in a single string or but I try to even it out so you can't tell which is which. I like to keep legato phrasing with open strings if I can, but if I want to make a point, then I'll play a melody staccato, that sort of thing.
Sure.
But I like to be, I don't like to get way up the neck and, I don't like to do that. I like to play it,
Yeah.
So the thing that is discouraging to me is that it's almost, I'm not saying this with all players, but there's no reason in the world that that you can't sight read to banjo. You don't get that much of I'm a very mediocre sight reader because I just don't get a chance to practice it or do it that much. Mm-hmm. But
So we kind of got in this by talking about your desire to improvise like those fiddlers at that Idaho convention.
Yeah.
So you said you transcribed a whole bunch of solos. How, I don't know, I guess I'm not sure what I'm asking other than how did that transition into you solving this puzzle of how to improvise like those people that you were saying?
God, I don't know. That's why, I'm still not totally aware of what's going on. I admit it freely. I was going to play you a Berline version of a tune, maybe.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's called, what the heck is it? Tom and Jerry? Sorry for the bobble there. How late is it? Anyway, so that was off a tape, a cassette tape.
Mm-hmm.
I never forget it. But you'll notice that when I go, almost no movement on. That's being opportunistic.
The efficiency, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, you nailed it. That's it. Yeah, that's a ticket. I'm efficient. Yeah.
Which is why we wear 3 picks. Everyone else plays with just the one. Why would you limit yourself like that?
As Bill Keith said, it calls for a finger independence of the right hand.
Uh-huh.
And that's a very difficult thing because just up in our brain, neurologically, we're wired to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
So forward rolls,
Yeah.
grasping. When we have to unhand something, then it gets stranger,
Interesting.
You pry something
I never
out,
thought about it
you
like
pry
that.
something out of somebody's dead hands or something. But the idea is to go against that, you start to get finger independence and to practice that. The banjo player Billy Ray liked to use backward patterns quite a bit. Now, I don't use rolls. I have no idea what they are. I know people give names to these patterns and everything, forward,
Sure.
backward, square, upside down,
Yeah.
blue, red. But I don't know what they are because I didn't learn that way. I learned the most inefficient, horrible way that a person could learn, and that's one note at a time, trying to move a pin over a needle over a record,
Just learn what the note is and then try to figure out how to go get it.
Right, and my mother would she said, you never play anything. It's just, you just keep repeating over and over and over. You never play anything. Why don't you play something?
That is
so I
playing
finally, in other words, instead of learning rolls, my first song that I learned was Little Darling Pal of Mine, And that I'd never forget it. Took it right off the record. You see?
Yeah.
So I finally learned it. I don't know, maybe 2.5 months or something, taking it note for note. And I went in and I played it for my mom in the kitchen. And she goes, "Oh, that's nice, son. Aren't there like 8 more songs on that album?"
Thanks for the encouragement.
Yeah, the
Mom.
encouragement. Yeah. Right.
She was learning how you respond to challenges, I guess. So
I just wanted to show her that I wasn't repeating all the time either. I was actually learning
Right.
something.
Yeah.
But I don't, I guess if I have one objection to the way banjo is taught is that when a technique becomes a thing in itself rather than the music and the finished product, where people are constantly looking for rolls and tablature and that sort of a thing, which according to my mind should be dispensed with as soon as possible.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
put into your ear. I mean, think about it. If you want to play Dixie, you can sing Dixie and everything. Sing the notes to Poggy Mountain Breakdown.
Yeah.
It's rapid arpeggiation, and the beauty of it is when you do speed it up.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe the whole thing's a roll.
Yeah.
A whole song, is a roll. But I only say that because the Scruggs book came out 3 years after I began.
So you're just kind of what's a word? Maybe jaded that you didn't have that right away to.
It wouldn't have made any difference. I couldn't read tablature at the time. I still don't read tablature that good, that well, that good.
Folks, there is plenty more to come from my conversation with Pat Cloud, but you are going to have to wait for a future episode for that. Lots of good stuff still to come. You did hear several sound clips on this episode in order. They were Black Wolf, performed by Pat Cloud, 8th of January, performed by Eric Weisberg. Doug's Tune, performed by Doug Dillard. Sea Jam Blues, performed by Oscar Peterson. And Bloom Dido, performed by Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. Once again, thank you to Pete Miller, the Patreon supporter of this episode. Go to patreon.com/banjopodcast, and you too can be a Patreon supporter. Get a hold of me, pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And that's all I have to say for this. I'm going to see you all next time for the next episode. Cheers.